delicate relationship continuously takes place behind the scenes of life. This relationship drives the very essence of life and the longevity of our ecosystems, societies, and planet. This relationship is between us and water. In order to understand this relationship and what it means for a sustainable future, historical and cultural perspectives of South Florida's water history require exploration. Miami Waterkeeper protects the water you love by advocating for and giving a voice to the most important natural resource we have, clean water. In South Florida, the sprawling landscape of urban jungle against a seemingly clear and blue Biscayne Bay estuary paints a picture of harmony. But in reality, our polluted paradise is approaching a tipping point. For centuries, South Florida was inhabited by few people, and the water flowed freely over the land. Freshwater as far north as Lake Okeechobee moved down through the Everglades, the river of grass maneuvering through densely forested subtropical areas, charging through rivers and streams, and ultimately spilling into southeast Florida's coastal wetlands and replenishing Biscayne Bay, a beloved estuary here in Miami that depends on a balance of fresh and salt water. South Florida's waters have shaped the landscape in meaningful ways and hold cultural ties. The mouth of the Miami River was once a rich ecosystem full of fish, crustaceans, and shellfish that depended on the recharge of freshwater from rapids, springs, and natural sheet flow. Imagine rapids churning in the Miami River and freshwater springs bubbling up in Biscayne Bay. The first tribes to inhabit the bayside relied on these freshwater resources to thrive. The name Miami is derived from the Miami tribe that lived near the large freshwater Lake Okeechobee. The Tequesta tribe, a small indigenous tribe, originally settled on what is now Miami. The Tequesta relied on waterways such as the Oleta River to reach fishing spots in abundant Biscayne Bay. The outline of the circle in the Miami Waterkeeper logo is the outline of the Miami Circle, which is a Tequesta archaeological site at the mouth of the Miami River and Biscayne Bay. The site was discovered in 1998 and is thought to be between 1700 and 2000 years old. Shell tools, dolphin skulls, turtle shells, and shark teeth were found inside the circle, indicating that this circle is one of the first known interactions of humans and the water in the Miami area. After hundreds of years, with little impact on the environment by the indigenous tribes that called the area home, Miami experienced rapid growth after its establishment as a U.S. city in 1896. Miami was the first large city in the United States founded by a woman, Mary Brickell, and she was the main driving force behind extending Henry Flagler's railroad down to South Florida. As South Florida became a more desirable place to live, receiving over 172,000 immigrants from the Caribbean and elsewhere in the United States from 1896 to 1940, more and more land was required for settlers. The natural landscape started to be altered and the building of a major city began. By the mid-1900s, Miami was becoming an expansive metropolis, but resources quickly felt the strain of this urbanization boom. Natural South Florida, with thick stands of mangroves and lush wetland ecosystems brimming with life, was changing on its face. Natural mangrove shorelines on barrier islands such as Miami Beach were clear-cut to create beaches. Settlers established homesteads in the coastal ridge area of Coconut Grove, once consisting of bluffs, and rooted pineapple plantations on Key Biscayne. Commercialization demanded a bridge to the Key, which prompted construction of the Rickenbacker Causeway. Miami Beach emerged as a new destination for homesteaders and travelers alike. Locations like Lincoln Road and Ocean Drive gained popularity at the expanse of coastal ecosystems. Miami Beach is just one example of many areas in our region where natural ecosystems have succumbed to the demands of human nature. Historically, Biscayne Bay and the edge of the Everglades were separated by only 3 miles of land. Facing the growing demands of a developing population, decision makers moved forward with a plan to drain vast portions of the Everglades in the early 1900s, dredging canals and channelizing the watershed. This system of canals expanded through the mid-1940s and is the system we have still to this day. The canal system altered the flow of freshwater completely and had cascading effects on the freshwater-dependent ecosystems and estuaries across South Florida. The freshwater springs that used to bubble up in the middle of the bay and the rapids once so common along the Miami River slowly began to disappear. All hope was not lost. Activists like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and Lloyd Miller began to take action and demand restoration and protection of Miami's natural resources. And soon, our entire country willed for change and a true environmental narrative began. The 1970s marked the age of environmentalism in the United States, and such landmark laws as the Clean Air Act, Endangered Species Act, and Clean Water Act were passed. Of these, the Clean Water Act is of particular significance to South Florida. The Clean Water Act is a safeguard to ensure everyone's right to water that is clean enough for swimming, drinking, and fishing. Yet, historically, this right is one preserved largely for only white communities. In Miami, discriminatory redlining practices have inequitably impacted communities of color, resulting in segregated neighborhoods, parks, and beaches. Historic Virginia Key Beach Park was one such place for Miami's traditionally marginalized Black and Caribbean community.
I'm Guy Fortune, the Executive Director of Virginia Key Beach Park Trust. The trust was created in 2001 to protect, restore, and operate historic Virginia Key Beach. That is the colored-only beach for Miami-Dade County. It was established in 1945, so during segregation, this was the first and only place that people of color, that African Americans could go into the water, could go into the beaches, which is the hallmark of South Florida, a vacation and recreation community for many decades. And that was done by a very courageous few that got together and waded in at Baker's Hallover Park. So that's up in Sunny Isles Beach today, North Miami Beach today, what we all know as Hallover Beach. And so they waded into the water. This was in the 40s, so this was before the traditional 1960s, counter sit-ins and those types of things. This was an early effort by a group that wanted to make sure that the African American community in Miami had a place to recreate. And it was very successful. They went at that time to ready to be arrested, ready to put in jail, and even further, at that time, this was life or death. You really didn't know what was going to happen. There were many beatings and killings of African Americans and people of color at that time. So this was really a courageous act to go forward, go to Hallover Beach, defy the law, go into the water. And the idea really was to bring that attention to the injustice of people of color not having somewhere to go into the water and a beach to recreate in. And the city fathers at that time, rather than rush in with the police and haul people off to jail, they negotiated. And they negotiated with those Black leaders that were in a position to do so and were able to secure on the island of Virginia Key, and at that time more than 200 acres, but what is now historic Virginia Key Beach Park. When we think about historic Virginia Key Beach Park from its inception, August 1st, 1945, and through that period while it was a county property to 1979, we're really dealing with that successful civic activism action. That is the right to water, the right to water access and recreation, and that's what it was for the African American community right up to 1965. Was this amazing place of security, pride of the community. What we believe today is the most beautiful beach and natural beach in South Florida. It took that away, and it fell into disrepair. The county turned the land over to the city of Miami in 1979, and it operated only for 3 years, an open operating city park, and had to close in 1982 as we have redeveloped this 82 acres, and the county has redeveloped another adjacent 50 acres in a wetland boardwalk. We have watched wading birds and all kinds of sea life come back to this area. We're very proud of what's been able to be done, and over the years, it has been largely due to tens of thousands of volunteer hours. So we're very proud to say this is the People's Park. And it was many years ago, it was in 1945, and it is today. This is the People's Park, this is your space, and it's very important to maintain your activity here, your volunteerism, and your right to public space and access to the water. I think what's important in this story is that Virginia Key Beach is a civic activism success story. And I think with what's going on today and has been going on in the last several years, it's clear that activism, community coming together, all of us is very important. We've got to act. I think it's very important now with what we've seen in the Bay's health or lack thereof, that we all have to do our part. And not just at Virginia Key, this is every canal and waterway near your home. You've got to make your leadership, your elected officials, know what you need to have happen to the environment.
As the mid-20th century saw immense transformations in engineering, science, and invention, along with a population boom nationwide, pollution issues plaguing waterways became more apparent than ever in America's big cities. In 1960s New York City, the Hudson River was widely treated as an open sewer. Corporate and government polluters dumped sewage and industrial waste unabated into the waterway. In response, New York fisherfolk banded together to advocate for the protection, establishing the Hudson River Fishermen Association, later becoming the Hudson Riverkeeper, led by John Cronin. In 1972, landmark protections for water resources were passed in the Federal Clean Water Act. This law included a provision, a citizen suit provision, which expressly allowed for citizens to represent their interests in clean water in court, giving a significant voice to water resources. Environmentalists started to emerge nationally and internationally and sought to tackle issues from drinking water degradation to toxic industrial discharges. Citizens representing waterways across the United States addressed contamination and unpermitted pollution. South Florida was no exception. One such monumental Clean Water Act case took place right here in Miami regarding the Munisport landfill, where our nation's first Clean Water Act 404C veto was issued.
After moving to Miami in 1965, I read articles in the Miami Herald about a group of citizens who were trying to save a vast area in South Biscayne Bay. I joined their group, which was the Isaac Walton League Mangrove Chapter, and participated with them over the years in having the area established as a national park. As part of my activities with the Mangrove Chapter, I became an advocate for mangroves. At the time, I was living in North Miami, the city that I still live in, and became active in my own homeowners association with a project basically to plant trees all through the neighborhood. And then I learned that the city council was going to enter into a contract to develop land that the citizens thought had been protected from development, and part of the project was to wipe out mangroves. So on behalf of the Homeowners Association, I became involved in the Munisport opposition to the way they were proceeding. It was a newly created firm with principals from Virginia who owned and operated a demolition company there. They had no experience in creating recreational facilities, but that was what they proposed to do for the city. They applied for an Army Corps permit stating that they would use clean fill and that the benefit would be a public recreation area, and that in the area of the fill, they would maintain 8 acres of mangroves as sort of a nature preserve in the golf course. They started their fill operation without the benefit of permits, and it soon became apparent they were using garbage and trash and it wasn't clean fill. They represented to the city that they were complying with environmental regulations, there were no problems at the site, and they showed pictures to the city of the rock pits that they had dug on the site as part of the amenities, looking sparkly blue. So I hired a helicopter and I went with a neighbor who was a photographer, and we flew over the site low, took photos of the rock pits, and they were black. And you could see garbage being dumped in them, and it was disgusting. On the very last day of the Carter administration, the veto was issued. And it was the first one under the Clean Water Act, January 19th, 1981. And the Clean Water Act was 1972. So it was quite a precedent-setting event. Citizen advocacy is of the highest importance because the citizens seem to always be like 5 years ahead of the elected officials. And the elected officials recognize that. And when citizens come to hearings and they talk about the things that are affecting the environment and affecting them and what they observe, it does help. And it is almost essential.
Amidst the Clean Water Act momentum came further action to protect Miami's water resources. The Biscayne National Monument, designated in 1968, the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve, was created in 1974, and then shortly thereafter, Biscayne National Park was established in 1981. These changes helped to shape the regulations and ecosystem protections that are still in place today. South Florida's storied past has involved overuse of resources and inequitable access to the same. Steps have been taken to right these wrongs, but much work lies ahead to safeguard our water quality, ecosystems, and coastal communities.